Hey there. First off, let's get the shaved elephant out of the room. I don't have a beard right now. Here's the thing. I've been cast as the lead in a reboot of Ted Lasso. It's for BET Plus. I'll be playing Ted Lasso. But because it's for BET Plus, we couldn't afford to go to London, so we're filming it in Canada. And instead of a soccer team, he's the coach of a hockey team. And because it's Canada, everybody in Canada is really nice, and he's the asshole. So, look for it in summer of 2031. Anyway, what you're about to listen to right now is a pilot for a podcast that doesn't exist. I had this idea, and it was kind of inspired by a Reddit comment that I made the mistake of reading. You should never read those. Anyway, the comment said, Wyatt Cenac is talented. Thank you. But he's pretty much made a career on being one of those raw nerve types when it comes to the issue of race. It's his focus 24/7. If there's a place to find offense at a white person doing something, Cenac will sniff it out like a truffle pig. It's all the dude sees. Now, personally, I've met me, and I've seen most of my work, most of it. And I don't know that I agree with that Reddit comment, but it did get me thinking, what if I did? What if I did try to see race in everything? What if I tried to be that truffle pig? Could I do that? And not simply to find offense in everything like that Reddit commenter suggested, and also Reddit commenter / fan, I think we can agree. They called me talented. But again, not with the idea to find offense in everything, but to see how race plays a role in our world in so many different ways, positively and negatively. And so I started developing this idea with Pineapple Street Studios. They make a lot of great podcasts, which you may know or should know, like Classy with Jonathan Menjivar, 70 Over 70, Still Processing, and Missing Richard Simmons. Anyway, we started talking about doing something, and they were really into it, and they said, why don't we just make a pilot, and we could take that out to potential buyers? And so that's what we did. And we took it out, and nobody bought it. And then Pineapple's parent company went bankrupt. I don't think because of this pilot, but I'm not 100% sure. At any rate, I have this pilot. I'm just sitting on it. And it got me thinking about, in the 90s, there was this show on CBS called the CBS Summer Playhouse, which made sense because it was on CBS during the summer. But the show, what they would do is they would air pilots for TV series that never became full series. And for CBS, it was probably just really cheap summer programming, but it was a cool idea because all those pilots, people worked really hard on them. They put a lot of energy and effort into them, and nobody got to see them. And I kind of felt similar with this. A lot of people worked really hard to help me make this pilot, and I'm proud of it. And so I figured I would share it with you, and that's what I'm going to do now. Because this isn't a real podcast, I don't have a sponsor whose copy I'd read right now and I'd tell you how much I love their mattress or this subscription wine service, and then I'd offer you a discount code by using my name or the title of the show. I don't have that. This isn't a real podcast that way, so sorry. That said, you could still try. When you're online shopping, feel free to type my name into the discount code area, and if it works, see what happens. If it works, you're welcome. I hope you enjoy. I think there's maybe an internet button that I'll push, and it should start. When I was a kid, I played with toys. A lot of toys. And I'm not ashamed to say that. Today, I see a lot of adults who collect the same toys I used to play with as a kid. Those 40-year-olds would have gotten along great with 9-year-old me. One of the most popular toys when I was a kid was G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe, American hero. G.I. Joe is there. A real American hero, presumably because they were made overseas for pennies on the dollar? Thus undercutting American labor unions, allowing the company to make huge profits while shielding themselves behind the notion of supporting the troops. G.I. Joe. When it came to G.I. Joe, I sank a lot of my folks' money and Santa's money into supporting those plastic troops. I had a Jeep, I had a tank, a helicopter, a jet fighter. What I didn't have was a lot of diversity. Most of the G.I. Joe characters were white guys and some snake people. And when I was a kid, they made 3 black G.I. Joes. I had all 3. There was Roadblock, the Brutus Giant who only spoke in rhymes, which even as a kid felt a bit inappropriate for the theater of war. There was Stalker, who was barely on the G.I. Joe cartoon, probably because he was a stalker. And then there was a medic named Doc who wore glasses and was a pacifist. And look, there's a lot to be said about grooming children with toys and cartoons that glorify the military-industrial complex, but I can tell you right now, no kid I grew up around thought that the pacifist was cool. Nobody liked Doc. But this was my squadron. Those 3, and then there was a Native American G.I. Joe named Spirit, an Asian soldier named Quick Kick who didn't wear shoes or a shirt so he could never get into a convenience store. Also Snake Eyes, who I knew was a white ninja, which is not a thing, but since he was dressed head to toe in all black, he was black to me. And the Baroness, who was actually a villain, and she had dark hair and a black catsuit. I had her action figure, and I would pretend that she was Puerto Rican and secretly a G.I. Joe. These were the kind of mental gymnastics I did as a child to play pretend warmongering. Because with so many white characters, the message I got was that G.I. Joe is a world that didn't want to make too much space for people of color. But I didn't have to deal with any of that when I was playing with Legos. I loved Legos. I loved building Lego castles and pirate ships. My favorite Legos were the motorcycle riders. I'd always find a way for a motorcycle rider to show up in medieval times. I think part of why I liked Legos was because they felt race neutral to 9-year-old me. There was no black or white. Everybody was yellow. And so while I couldn't necessarily see myself in those characters, neither could anybody else. So I got to play with Legos free from the confines of race. My teeny tiny brain dug Legos because it felt like they were this radical backlash that was forcing everyone to see themselves as the same, as human first and yellow second. Pretty deep, right? And then a few years ago, I was on a cross-country flight and the Lego movie was available to watch. And it felt like good and light airplane entertainment about one of my favorite childhood toys. If you've never seen a Lego movie, it's about a Lego dude in a Lego world and also kind of about fatherhood. And as I'm flying over Kansas, I put on this movie and it begins with a battle between a villain named Mr. Business and a wise wizard named Vitruvius, who is voiced by a man who seems like he came out of the womb with the voice of a wizard, Hollywood's Morgan Freeman. And then we see Vitruvius. He shows up on screen, and this was something I did not expect because Vitruvius had not yellow, but brown skin.
He is coming. Cover your butt.
Cover the what?
Vitruvius was black. And I don't know if I audibly gasped on that airplane, but I'm sure the person next to me did not think the Lego movie would bring an adult man into a rage in Comfort Plus. Legos didn't have a race. They could be anybody. And then all of a sudden, a black Lego person appears. And then we never see another brown Lego person again. We see hundreds of Lego people, and they were all yellow. In one moment, the Lego movie broke my 9-year-old brain by confirming a fear I never wanted to admit. Lego people were white people. And hundreds of these formerly race-neutral white people are singing about how everything is awesome in a world where only one black Lego person exists until he's murdered to inspire our yellow white hero, because apparently even in Legoland, they seem oblivious to the tired-ass trope of the magical Negro. As a kid, I wanted to live in this hopeful world where Legos were maybe trying to be inclusive by dismantling racial constructs and letting kids of all backgrounds simply build their ideal world. But now, yellow is apparently code for white? And if that's the case for Legos, is that the case for other things? I mean, is Pac-Man really a white dude who's getting rewarded for going around slaughtering and imprisoning a diverse group of ghosts who are just trying to live their lives? I'm saying Pac-Man and Policeman have a lot of the same letters. Think about it. We all walk through this world led by our own experiences and bias. So often people try to ignore or run from that idea, but I'm curious to see what happens when we acknowledge and lean into it. That's what I want to do with this show. To look at the ways that race affects everything we do in seen and unseen ways. And hopefully do it while highlighting both the positive and negative ways that race and culture impact the world around us. One black Lego person in a movie full of yellow Lego people is kind of racist. I don't think it's malicious racism, unless there's a deleted scene where all those yellow Legos build and then burn a cross in that black Lego person's yard. But if Legos can be racist, then everything can be racist. Think about it. When even the most seemingly benign things can have a racial impact, perhaps the most racist thing any of us can do is ignore that. This is Everything is Racist with Wyatt Cenac. That's me. I'm Wyatt. I'm Wyatt Cenac. The makers of the Lego movie weren't really thinking about how one black Lego in a world of yellow Lego would look. Which is odd because according to the Lego Corporation, that is something they were thinking about in 1978 when they painted a little smiley face on a yellow head and created what is now known as the minifigure. And on the one hand, it'd be easy to ask, why the hell would a Danish company like Lego even be thinking about representation? Back in 1978, most streets in Denmark probably looked as monochromatic as the Lego movie. Even today, most streets in Denmark probably look a lot like the Lego movie. But here was this Danish company making a choice to create a toy devoid of race in the way that we know it. Everyone in the world of Lego is one color, and it's yellow. I went on the company's website, and this is a direct quote from Lego. They say, "We chose yellow because it's a neutral skin color. Nobody in real life has bright yellow skin. So Lego minifigures don't represent a specific race or ethnic background, and nobody's left out."
Yeah, there's sort of a claim that this is unrealistic enough to be universal.
That's Dr. Derek Johnson. He's a professor at the University of Wisconsin at Madison, and you're going to hear from him and some other folks as we try to get to the bottom of why a color like yellow has become a default for whiteness. In their attempt to make things accessible to everyone, Lego figured they'd remove race from their world and create a race-neutral monoculture where everyone was yellow. Everyone, regardless of race or gender, had the same yellow head, the same yellow hands, the same smiley face. But when we look at how that minifigure developed over the years, it tells a really interesting story about how that race-neutral idea seemed flawed from the very beginning. Earlier, I introduced Dr. Derek Johnson. I wanted to talk to him because he studies
the media industries. I look specifically at creativity and struggles over authority in cultural production.
One of the things Dr. Johnson studies is how movie and TV licensing can make companies like Lego evolve and change in unexpected ways. And to do that, it means that sometimes, in a totally professional capacity, he gets paid to study Lego. And for those of you who aren't as familiar with Lego because maybe you were a Lincoln Log kid, here's a little bit of history that might be helpful. Lego started out in 1934, but in 1978, they first began releasing minifigures and playsets that existed in three main worlds: Lego Town, Lego Space, and Lego Castle. Lego Town was city shit. Gas stations, police cars, airports. Space was space. And Castle had knights and horses. To help differentiate each minifigure with their respective world, Lego would print designs and patterns on the body of each minifigure to say, hey, this figure, he's a medieval knight. Or that's a nurse. Or a spaceman. Lego made hats and helmets and accessories like swords and walkie-talkies, and while each minifigure body now had ways to point out which world they belonged in, each face was the same yellow head with 2 dots for eyes and a little smile. A simple smiley face that suggested this minifigure could be anyone. This minifigure could be you. And while that's the suggestion, there were only two hairstyles. One that could be best described as young Republican with sweeping bangs and a part down the side, and the other was more a Pippi Longstocking style pigtails. Neither were hairstyles that I could pull off as a kid, so if I wanted to see myself in a Lego minifigure, he had to wear a space helmet. I had to cover my Lego man's face to see myself.
I think that the story of Lego's continued experimentation with specializing the minifigure is them having to confront where the logic of the universal raceless minifigure starts to break down, right? Where they get more and more specialized, and it's like, wait a minute, what did this mean all along, right? What does that universal skin tone actually convey? Is it a default whiteness?
It does kind of feel that way to me, and not just because of the minifigures. I mean, the Lego castle set is styled after a medieval castle. They may be yellow figures, but medieval castle suggests a world that was very European and very white. And look, given how many white people freak out whenever brown people show up in Lord of the Rings movies or Game of Thrones, it's safe to say that yellow or not, the king of that castle is supposed to be a white guy. These playsets were a hit. And in the late 80s, as demand grows, race begins to creep into Lego. As they start to venture into telling other stories, they begin to produce minifigures that weren't the same old yellow smiley people.
So the big shifting point to me is 1989, where the minifigure head, right, that yellow piece, the yellow minifigure head, starts to change to accommodate all of this specialization. And that was with the pirate theme. Because it's hard to have a pirate theme if you don't have beards and eye patches for your pirates. You can't just have a smiley face anymore.
I mean, if we want to get technical, we maybe shouldn't have toys celebrating pirates. They weren't good people.
We were Lego pirates looking for some pillage. So we figured we'd take off to an unsuspecting village.
By introducing pirates who leave Europe and sail the high seas, much like many explorers before them, these little Lego men and one lady meet people who don't look like them.
I mean, I think there are places where in those stories that foreground oftentimes white colonialist narratives, right? There are places in which non-white people become part of the Lego story there, right? As sort of adversaries or as, supporting characters.
For the pirate theme, Lego introduced islander characters that come in sets like Forbidden Cove, Crocodile Cage, and King Kahuka's Throne. And listening to the rapping pirate in this commercial, it doesn't feel like King Kahuka's monarchy is to be recognized or respected.
But just as we thought that the goal was in reach, the Imperial Armada pulled right up to the beach. We toppled their mast. They rammed our hull.
So the pirate theme is not just introducing different face printings, they're also introducing, islander characters, right? This sort of roughly Polynesian subgroup of characters within the pirate line, which are there, not to put too fine a point on it, they're there to have their culture looted by the pirates who we're building ships for. So, the figures for them had painted faces and sort of dress, again, evoking Polynesian cultures, grass skirts and things like that.
And even though these island characters are there to be conquered by the pirates, they still have the same big-ass smile on their faces, as though they're saying, "Welcome, oppressors! Come steal this gold we're not using properly because we're a bunch of primitive dum-dums."
There's a shift there from all wigs being sort of white hair to, well, now we have hair that is meant to evoke other cultures, but using very stereotypical imagery, a wig that now we put a bone through the top of to connote that idea of primitiveness.
That bone through the hair, it's a caricature of a traditional Polynesian tribal look that is not based on anything. If you go on the internet and look for that, you're not going to find images of Polynesians. You're going to find images of Sideshow Mel from The Simpsons. Another world full of yellow-skinned people. Although if you ask Homer Simpson, he sees himself a little differently.
I'm a white male, age 18 to 49. Everyone listens to me.
Throughout the 90s, Even though all the Lego minifigures are still yellow, they start to depict race in other ways. One of the more notable examples of this was 1997's Lego Wild West playsets.
On quest for Sacred Shield, Lego Braves had come.
They experiment with noses on the minifigure for the first time, which wasn't something that stuck around. But it's interesting that noses emerge again at this point where they're trying to communicate differences between people who are all yellow. Everyone's still yellow, but there are different kinds of yellow people.
So some of these Lego Braves now had face paint and broad noses. None of the other minifigures had noses, but these had broad noses.
Indian fortress loomed above. Red Fox grabbed canoe, dodged falling trees, climbed hidden ladder. Sacred Shield was his.
The Lego world may think it's trying to be race neutral, but it's taking inspiration from the real world. And in the real world, it's fucking weird to see that commercial from 1997 where a little white boy is wearing a headdress and war paint. That might fly for Lego people, but for real people, that's something that will come back to haunt that little white kid if he runs for governor or prime minister of Canada. It won't actually stop his campaign, it's just a speed bump. And as bad as that is, check out this ad from 1998 when Lego introduced their Ninja playsets. Pay attention to the white narrator's performance and see if you spot anything kind of weird.
Meet Robbie Ellis, mild-mannered student by day,
Ninja Legomaniac by night, building ancient castles.
Okay, you can't tell me that's not racist. The dude switched up his voice mid-commercial. He's doing yellow face for a bunch of Lego that have actual yellow faces, which in itself is weird, especially when you consider how the color yellow has for years been an offensive way to depict Asian people.
That's where they start to make adjustments to the minifigure's eyes, right? To put like slanted eyebrows on the minifigure in ways that, of course, are in keeping with stereotypical kind of caricatures of Asian identity. It's like they're trying to accommodate difference through the limited form of the yellow figure. And, that gets into some real tricky territory.
Can I say racism?
Yes, Helen, you can.
Like, don't add extra costuming. Don't add any of this is like objectification. It's like, ooh, it's even more offensive than just having a little yellow figurine. Right. This is like saying, we know we got some issues going on.
That's Dr. Helen Neville. She's also a professor, but not one that gets to play with Lego.
I am a professor at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and my fields of study are Black Studies and counseling psychology.
I wanted to talk to her because she's done a lot of work around the psychological effects of what she calls colorblind racial ideology, where people either want to pretend like they don't see race or they minimize racism even exists. I'm curious what the implications of trying to take race out of the conversation might be for Lego people and their life-size counterparts known as us.
So we know from psychological research and some of the research I've done and that others have done, that when people say, racism is not really a thing, that might have been a thing in the past, when we know that people have those types of beliefs, we know that they actually hold greater racial intolerance.
That would explain that Lego Ninja commercial. And look, I know I'm focusing on a toy, but it's a toy that is also considered a learning tool. Lego markets itself as a STEM toy that's teaching kids the value of science, technology, engineering, and math through play. By promoting this idea of a race-neutral yellow utopia, are they also giving kids problematic lessons about race?
We live in a society that everything is racialized. So while you might erase or take out mention of race, it shows up in other policies and practices. This notion that race doesn't matter, that we are all the same, that we are all human beings. But what that does is it ignores that there's these systems that shape our experiences. And so this racial colorblind ideology is also racism doesn't matter. It's not important in shaping people's lived realities.
What Dr. Neville and others in her field have found through their research is that seeing the world in a colorblind way can actually make you more racist. It's a little bit like somebody getting behind the wheel of a car and saying, I don't see speed limits. Chances are pretty good when they're wrapped around a telephone pole, speed limits will see them.
When people say, I don't see race, I'm not going to look at race in our interactions, actually those interactions then when Black and white folks interact and when Black folks are interacting with a white person in a task that they're given and they're told not to think about race, it takes them longer to complete the task. That it's still in the room and it's even more in the room when people are denying it.
When folks can't see racism as an institutional problem, they're more likely to blame individual people for those problems. It's not we as a company need to take account of our blind spots. It's you, the individual, needs to shut your mouth and keep making those cogs, monkey. Oh, do you not like it when I call you monkey? Monkey? Dr. Neville saw this one study with counselors.
When they were given a vignette to take a look at and analyze, what is this person's presenting concern? The folks who didn't get racism were more likely to blame that person for the levels of depression they were experiencing, more like to say, let's help them with anger management.
So rather than have their problems heard and empathized with, that person of color is more likely to be met with the same energy as the characters from that Lego movie I watched.
Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when we're part of the team.
So I find that people who want to think about a monoculture want to deny, distort, and minimize these external factors that influence and shape people's lived realities. And I think when people push for a monocultural society, they really want people to assimilate into what folks think is a U.S. norm. And what folks think is a U.S. norm is white middle-class values.
Those white middle-class values, they're not just U.S. values, they're Danish values too. Remember I mentioned that Lego introduced the minifigure back in 1978? That same year, millions of people were fleeing brutality and ethnic cleansing in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. Many countries stepped up to take in refugees. In 1978, it marked the first year that Denmark, the home of Lego, chose to open its borders and actively welcome some of those refugees into their country. During that time, the country passed some of the most progressive immigration policies in Europe. But today, the Danish government is moving in the opposite direction, approving a plan to dismantle many of those immigrant neighborhoods that sprung up as a result of those earlier policies. These immigrant communities have been deemed parallel societies, where to the government, the people don't speak enough Danish or live by Danish values. And when I see that story, it weirdly makes me think of the Lego movie. There's this scene early in the movie during a musical number where Lego construction workers are building things in their Lego city.
Instructions coming in from Central. Okay, it says here to take everything weird and blow it up.
I'm not trying to suggest that the government of Denmark got their idea to blow up immigrant neighborhoods from watching the Lego movie or from playing with Lego as children. But looking at Lego and the world they've created, it feels like a parallel society to what's happening in Denmark. One where in trying not to see race, you inevitably force the minority to accept and assimilate, while the majority loses empathy or understanding for that minority's experience. Having to flee a country and start all over in a new land with a new language is really hard and stressful and traumatic. And then to be told you're only welcome here in this new country if you strip away who you are and fit into our idea of who you should be, that feels kind of like somebody saying, hey, put this bone in your hair. Again, this is not to trash Lego. White people who might be listening, I'm not saying everyone at Lego is racist, or every person who is sitting in their basement building Lego is racist. Although statistically speaking, you gotta grant me that at least one person probably is.
When 27-year-old Robert Morris of Pennsylvania was arrested last month, officers recovered a fully constructed U.S. Capitol Lego set.
That dude was arrested for trying to storm the Capitol on January 6th. And according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, was once the president of an alt-right club at Penn State. But that's not the point. One thing I've learned when trying to talk to people about race is that it's uncomfortable. A lot of people, especially white people, can get incredibly defensive. So this is just a moment to remind you, we're talking about the problems with race-neutral thinking. Look, I don't want a bunch of angry Lego fans to build a giant dinosaur and come for me. I'm merely trying to point out that Lego is reflecting the values of the moment, and if those values are trash, they can seep into almost anything. And while Lego has been trying to live in this yellow race-neutral world where everything is awesome and we don't talk about race, in 1999, something happens that will both cause Lego's ideas to fracture and flourish at the same time.
I too.
The rebels need your help. Build us more ships.
Lego and Star Wars join forces for the first time.
In the late 90s, many of us were making bad decisions with fashion and hair and music. Lego was no different. But instead of low-rise jeans and frosted tips, Lego spent too much money on things like building amusement parks and a jewelry line. The company was reporting huge losses. They were in debt and they needed to do something. So in 1999, Lego released its first ever Lego licensed playset alongside the release of Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. Those sets included Lego playsets for The Phantom Menace, as well as toys and figures from the original trilogy that included characters like Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia, and R2-D2.
This is a big deal for Lego in a lot of ways.
That's Dr. Derek Johnson again. And this is the very reason why he gets to play with Lego as a grown-ass man. He studies the way licensing impacts companies, and it has a huge impact on Lego and the way they do or don't portray race.
It's a big deal for them because, remember, Lego is like an educational toy, right? Like this is a toy that's going to teach kids how to be creative, right? We think about its science and engineering and math applications when we justify why we're giving this to our kids. So this was a change to start saying, hey, we're going to have a relationship with Hollywood. We're going to be telling the kinds of stories that Hollywood tells. Now minifigures are not just general roles, right? Like this person's a policeman, this person's a pirate. They're now trying to be specific characters and specific actors playing those characters. And so that brings with it like all of the racial discourses that come with any, popularly recognizable figure, right? Like all of our bodies are raced in some kind of way. So initially, Lego tried to just do the same thing that it always did, right? We're going to make Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia minifigures. Well, they're going to be yellow, right? Just like all our minifigures. I mean, at one level, that's good branding. Why would we change the iconic yellow minifigure? But, over time, it's kind of like, okay, well, you guys have made 4 years of sets. Like, where the heck is Lando?
He's being polite. Lego made over 50 Star Wars sets before anybody in the company seemed to think, hey, maybe we should make a minifigure for the cooler-than-cool black guy, Lando Calrissian. The man who ran Cloud City, wore ice-cold capes, and was the dude who was actually flying the Millennium Falcon when the Death Star blew the fuck up? Do you want to know who had a minifigure before Lando Calrissian? Dak Ralter. Who the fuck is Dak Ralter? Sounds like somebody bit their tongue while trying to say Dan Rather. I looked him up. And you know what? He's a guy Luke Skywalker knew for 1 day. 1 day. And to thank him for his 1 day of service, Lego made a minifigure of him before Lando Calrissian.
If I had to make a list of the most important Star Wars characters, Lando would be really high on that list for me and for a lot of other people.
Definitely most black people, but also a lot of Lego Star Wars fans who for years were also saying, where the fuck is Lando? And who the fuck is Dak Ralter again? Oh, he's the guy who had like one line in a movie before he got crushed to death by an AT-AT? Cool.
And so in 2003, they make a Lando Calrissian minifigure. And to do that, it's like, well, like it does not compute if we try to make a Billy D. Williams minifigure who is yellow the same way as Luke Skywalker.
Really? I wonder why.
I mean, Billy D. Williams was a former blaxploitation star, right? Like, there are just ways in which, our bodies are legible through race, and you can't make Billy D. Williams without blackness. So for the first time in a licensed media set, Lego releases the Lando Calrissian figure in a color they call reddish brown instead of yellow. And, it's pretty much the same standard face, but he's got Billy D. Williams' mustache.
Bum, bum, bum! Kind of seems like Lego confirmed that all those little yellow dudes and dudettes were white the whole time. And now there's probably some amateur Lego historian who might say, well, technically, Lando wasn't the only black minifigure. True. That same year, Lego introduced an NBA-themed playset with minifigures modeled after real NBA players like Shaquille O'Neal and Vince Carter. The previous NBA-licensed Lego sets featured generic yellow minifigures. What seems clear is that Star Wars had caused Lego to puzzle for a while about how to address this Lando problem and what it meant for licensing at large.
And so they kind of take that Lando moment where it's like, oh shit, what do? We've got Lando Calrissian here. They sort of say, let's apply this to all of our licensed lines. Let's apply this to Star Wars. Let's apply this to Harry Potter, Indiana Jones, anything where we're trying to represent all of these media figures. Let's get rid of yellow and start bringing in this completely different system of racial representation.
That's right. Lando Calrissian wasn't just a hero in the world of Star Wars. He single-handedly used the Force like some kind of secret black Jedi to get Lego to finally reckon with race. And after Lando was introduced, Lego re-released some of those original Star Wars minifigures like Luke and Leia and Han Solo, but now, instead of yellow, they were white. Like actual white people's skin tone white.
Part of my favorite thing about this is just listing the names of the different colors that they use for skin tones here. We've got light nougat, but we've also got regular nougat. We've got brown. We've got earth orange.
And it's all because of Lando Calrissian. People like to say not all heroes wear capes, but Lando does. And according to the amateur Lego historians at Brickset.com, on August 10th, 2003, black as fuck Lando Calrissian finally entered the world of Lego Star Wars in the Cloud City playset. If you look at the image of that packaging, Lando is featured pretty big in the bottom corner of the box, as if to say, it's about damn time, you shits. Although Lando would probably say it.
Hello, what have we here?
August 10th should be a federally recognized holiday at Legoland. It should be taught in Lego schools. Statues should be built in Lando's honor. Little Lego Lando had a dream that one day minifigures of all races, light nougat and regular nougat and earth orange, would all come together and sing that old Lego spiritual. Everything is awesome, everything is awesome, everything is awesome. And while this feels like a moment of triumph for little mustachioed brown kids who can finally place that minifigure head on the body of a knight in a Lego castle or in a Lego spacesuit, this moment of getting Lego to finally acknowledge human races causes a problem. Because now Lego has created two worlds. A Lego world where everyone is yellow, and a Lego licensed world where lightsabers and human-like flesh tones exist. And Lego takes great pains to say these two worlds shouldn't cross-pollinate, but people playing with Lego can see that race exists. And you'll notice I said people and not children, because here's the other wrinkle. Dr. Johnson isn't the only adult playing with Lego. Lego has a very large and very enthusiastic adult audience. There are yearly Lego conventions across the globe, like Brick World and Brick Fair, where these adult Lego fans show off some of their custom builds.
Joshua Hinlin here at Brick Fair, Alabama 2020, and today we've got a massive, incredible representation of a Civil War battle.
And before you think this is a custom build of the Marvel movie Captain America Civil War,
all right, this is the Battle of Fredericksburg from December 1862. We chose this battle. It's one of our favorites.
Yup, that Civil War. These two dudes recreated the Civil War with little yellow Lego people. And they really got into some of the details with this build.
A slave stands in front of the house and tells the Union troops, no, this is my house, so that they won't loot it, and she's protecting it for her owners.
Good for you. Sharing black stories. Let me just say that this is the one place in these guys' entire build where there are people who aren't yellow. There's one enslaved medium nugget woman and a couple darker reddish-brown slaves behind her.
Do you know how long this build is in total?
It's just over 16 feet.
Okay, wow. Yeah, that's so impressive. So what was the ultimate culmination of the battle? How did it end?
It ended in a Confederate victory.
Hold up. What? These dudes built a 16-foot Lego reenactment of a Civil War battle, and it's one where the bad guys win? But I'm guessing these fellas don't see the Confederate Legos as the terrorists. Nah, they're just a bunch of misunderstood tiny yellow freedom fighters trying to protect the job of one black Lego slave.
Once you have those little yellow figures in the same toy box as the realistic flesh-tone figures, they start to read very differently.
That's Dr. Roy Cook. This show is full of doctors. He's a professor of philosophy at the University of Minnesota. He's also an AFL, an adult fan of Lego, who was once a KFL, a kid fan of Lego, who at that time appreciated that Lego was trying to be race neutral for reasons sort of like mine when I was a kid.
I think a lot of kids try to buy into that story as far as they can go until eventually you hit a wall where you realize it's really not everybody.
Right, yeah. Yeah, for you as a kid, did you grow up in a pretty diverse area? Was race something that you were aware of in your day-to-day life?
No, I grew up in a suburb of Richmond, Virginia.
Oh, shit, no. Yeah, you were definitely, you said it all.
Yeah, my high school class had one young black man and one young black woman, and they dated for 4 years. Into the 2000s, our mascot was the Rebel. And I remember my class in high school driving around a car with a Rebel flag in the back window.
Sort of like me, when Roy watched the Lego movie, it got him thinking about these issues of race and how it plays out.
Yeah, that case is really interesting for a number of reasons. One is it's one of the few places where Lego has broken their rule and used the darker skin shades in a non-licensed character, right? Because Vitruvius was their character specifically for the movie.
Vitruvius was that one black Lego dude I mentioned I saw in the Lego movie, but Roy also noticed that there was another non-yellow minifigure featured in the movie, Lego Batman.
And what's really interesting is Batman and Wildstyle, the female yellow-skinned main character, are dating at the beginning of that movie. And then she, of course, breaks up with Batman and gets with the hero Emmett.
No spoilers.
And if you take Lego at its word, then Batman and Wildstyle are a couple where one of them is white and one of them is from a world where race does not exist. What if they had a little Lego baby? That's sort of the philosophy professor in me taking Lego at its word and being very literal, and then these weird questions come up.
But we do live in a world where people freak the fuck out when Idris Elba plays a fictional Norse god in Thor. Come on, racists! Where's that same outrage for the Lego movie?
No one who watched that movie, no matter how prejudiced they might be, came out of that movie complaining about the mixed race couple.
I mean, I guess I am, but here's the thing. As Roy pointed out, you can say you don't want to see race, but inevitably you will.
So, a number of years back, Lego did a series of sets called Space Police. And it was little policemen in their little police vehicles and then villains in their hot roddy cars. And it was like, the police chasing the villains. It was just sort of this outer space version of cops and robbers. But what was interesting about this is every one of the police officers was human with a male or female printed yellow head. Every single one of the criminals was some sort of bug-eyed alien, in a strange skin color with a custom mold for their head. That head only appeared in that set and nowhere else. One of them was like wearing a purple pimp suit and hat.
The dude had a gold medallion and drove something called the Lunar Limo. Lego set 5984 for those of you playing at home and keeping score.
And it was like, okay, this is still in their world that they intend to be without race. But this just so illustrates how the idea of us and other gets replicated.
So here's where I could pull out my told you so trumpet and say, that's race! Lego created race in a race-neutral Lego world. Now granted, we don't have squid people on Earth yet, but when they show up, they're gonna be really offended. They're gonna be like, why do you think we're all criminals who wear gold chains and drive space Cadillacs? That's kind of racist. Would you do that to black people? Oh, people do? Interesting. If you go on the LEGO website, there's an area called LEGO Ideas where fans can submit ideas for new LEGO playsets. And if enough of the community votes for your idea, LEGO might build that set. In a way, it's LEGO creating a bit of democracy by the people for the LEGO people. It's because of LEGO Ideas the company has made licensed playsets for The Office, Seinfeld, and Friends. No playset for Living Single though, which we all know inspired Friends, but whatever. There was a LEGO Ideas playset that was made that did catch my attention. In 2022, LEGO took one of those ideas and made a foosball playset where minifigures were the players. But rather than the traditional yellow minifigures, these minifigures came with a bunch of different flesh-toned heads, from light nugget to reddish brown. One had vitiligo, and there were twice as many heads as there were bodies, which meant that whoever bought this had a multitude of options to see themselves. Looking at it, I found myself thinking this is what kid me wished the traditional world of LEGO looked like. That I could have bought a LEGO space set and had multiple options for who would fly to the moon. As far as I could tell, this LEGO foosball set, it's not licensed from anything. It's part of the regular LEGO world, which means the Nuggets have infiltrated the land where all the yellow people live. Hide your children! Nuggets have moved into the neighborhood! And that left me with a question for everyone I've spoken to in this story. Could LEGO just abandon yellow minifigures altogether?
In a perfect world, if LEGO was going to do the absolute morally right thing, then I think the answer is almost absolutely yes.
But me, the host of a show called Everything is Racist, I will acknowledge that we don't live in a perfect world. But a world where everyone is yellow doesn't seem perfect either.
Who was in the room when they decided yellow was the color of race neutrality?
People do have races, and how they understand and see and navigate the world is inflected by both their own racial identity, but maybe even more so by how other people see their racial identity.
Yellow by no means translates to be race neutral.
It's not obvious to me that getting rid of race, or just everybody deciding we're never going to mention race again, never notice it, we all put on some like glasses that blur out the skin colors so we can't tell or something. It's not obvious to me at all that that would be a good way to get rid of racism.
Or that it would get rid of racism.
Or that too, yeah.
I think it would be tough purely from a branding perspective.
This is media studies professor Dr. Derek Johnson again. He's the one who said it was clear from the very beginning that the iconic yellow minifigure was white. But turning the giant Lego ship around, or just tossing that yellow minifigure overboard, he doesn't see Lego doing that.
I think it would be quite a project for them to shift their brand to the degree that like the yellow minifigure is not yellow anymore. But one thing that I think they could do to work in that direction, I'm thinking about that foosball table again. The great thing about that foosball table is that would be a great purchase for anyone who likes Lego purely as like a set of parts, right? To have that many heads that you can use in all your different Lego sets. But that's a set that costs $250, right? Like the inclusion and diversity that Lego is offering there is at quite a price point.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the one thing I would say as the challenge to that would be, Aunt Jemima, they were able to get rid of her and that syrup still pours, or, the Washington football team, it took them a while, but they were able to, get rid of their mascot, that it does feel like from a branding standpoint, these things they're possible if you want them to be possible. The core of what Lego is intact.
Yeah, I only think it would be difficult because the other instances that you mentioned, like those are happening when complaints are being made. Like I think Lego would need more pressure put upon it to start to say maybe we should get rid of the yellow minifigure. And this podcast aside, I don't know that enough people are thinking about this issue quite yet to put that pressure on Lego.
This isn't about trying to cancel Lego or anything like that, because let's be clear, canceling is not real. Lego is a $7 billion company. They're not going anywhere. And that's not what this show is about. I told you the story to point out what Lego thought it was doing may have been for good, but it had the opposite effect. Personally, I think it'd be cool if Lego gave up their race-neutral stance and stopped making yellow minifigures. And there are other people who think that too. An organization of Lego fans called the Women's Brick Initiative has been pushing to eliminate the yellow minifigure in favor of more racial and gender diversity. They have a petition, and while I would love to tell you it has millions of signatures, they haven't made much traction. Because the truth is, while Lego may have work to do when it comes to race, those adult fans of Lego do too. But we all do. That's why it's worth talking about this stuff. If I've learned anything in this episode, it's not about changing the color of Lego to help children. They don't play with this shit. They're on their phones. While their middle-aged parents, on the other hand, are the ones playing with Lego. And it's those impressionable middle-aged minds that we should be talking to about this stuff, because those fuckers vote. And they pay taxes. Or storm capitals. This has been Everything is Racist with Wyatt Cenac. Thanks for listening. This one-of-one podcast was made possible thanks to Odyssey's Pineapple Street Studios and the hard work of the following people: Jonathan Menjivar, Leela Day, Melissa Slaughter, Janelle Anderson, Marina Pace, Pedro Alvira, Jade Brooks, Sharon Bardales, Gabe Kawagule, and Barry Finkel. Special thanks to Jenna Weiss-Berman, Max Linsky, Anna Holmes, Dominique Foxworth, Pablo Torre, Patrick Kim, Rachel Miller-Howard, and Meadowlark Media. And a big thanks to my guests, Dr. Helen Neville, Professors Derek Johnson and Roy Cook. And I'd like to dedicate this episode to the memory of Professor Cook's partner, Alice Lieber Cook, an adult fan of Lego who passed away as we were making this. Thanks for listening. This show won't be back next week, but I hope you enjoyed it.